Hi, my name is Jim Vergis. I'm a behavioral iridologist. I got into iridology in 1987 based on the need to try to heal from an accident after falling 44 feet off a roof and landing on concrete, breaking my pelvis in 6 places. I met a very interesting man named Denny Johnson who had created a system called the Rayad method, and I later became a Rayad master. And iridology really helped me to look at the patterns in my eyes and understand myself at a level I'd never even known. It was shortly after that that I was introduced to physical iridology, which also helped me to cleanse and strengthen my body. A few years after the accident in the early 80s, I started to develop lower back problems where my lower back would go out of place and I literally couldn't walk for a week to 2 weeks, crippled in pain. I found an excellent chiropractor while living in Boulder, Colorado, and he helped me a great deal with my back problem. But one day he said to me, "Jim, I can't help you anymore." He said, "Your problem is emotional." I said, "Emotional? Really?" I had no idea that there could be any kind of a connection between that and my back. He said, "You need to find somebody that can work with the emotions in the body." So I met a man, Dr. John Cervenka, who was also a chiropractor, who was developing a system called embodiment, where he would take me into the body and I would breathe into it. He would help me identify the feelings that were stored in the body, and I would literally just feel them and merge with them. The beauty, I hadn't ever had any counseling work or anything, and it was very new to me because every system I had studied and everything I was doing, I was trying to change those emotions and heal those emotions and get them out of my body. Yuck. And what embodiment taught was that we needed to learn to accept and embrace everything we felt. And when I could identify and embrace without judgment what I was feeling, which meant to really merge with it, that magic would happen in the body and I would create these inner transformations. And after about 2 or 3 years of his work, my back I must have got into my back 50 times. And I kept finding anger and sadness and loneliness and all these emotions. And the more I worked with them, the more my back got stronger. And I went over 25 years without any back problems. And I, to this day, don't have any back problems. And if ever I get an inkling or a spasm or anything start to show up there, I know how to go into that part of my body and begin to move the energy so I don't experience the physical symptomology called my back going out. And it helped me to understand that there is this body-mind connection between what I think and what I feel and what I'm actually experiencing in my physical body, called health or wellness or disease. Even a cut or a burn or a broken bone always has a component to it that has to do with the, quote, energetics. I call it the consciousness. We could also call it the feelings that are associated with any injury or accident. So what am I actually saying here? And what I actually learned over the years, that these two schools of iridology, the physical world, which had to do more with the inherent strengths and weaknesses in the body, and the behavioral world, which I was learning about, actually were going in the same direction. Because each of the schools, both in physical iridology, wanted to heal the body. And in the behavioral work, what I learned was that by identifying and moving the feelings in the body, that my physical body would actually heal. So that healing could come through working on my biochemistry, doing all the fasting and cleansing that I did to then take my body to the next level of health and well-being. And then as I was working in the emotional body and the mental body and the spiritual body with John's work, I was able to then create a deep, deep, long-lasting healing. Instead of just making a symptom go away, I wanted to go to the deepest level where I wouldn't have to deal with this issue of back problems anymore. And so my own life has been a journey and a learning about what it takes to create what's I would call healing in the body. Now that's an interesting statement, because if we break our leg or break an ankle or we have an injury, we heal from it. It goes away, and many times we may not even remember we had the injury in the first place. When it comes to the human psyche and the personality, healing is not making something go away. You can't make the past. You can't make feelings go away. What you can do is deny them. You can avoid them. You can pretend they don't exist. You can have them and not pay any attention to them. But what I really learned is that pain and our personalities hold within them our fears. And these fears are places that we've forgotten to love, that we're afraid of. And in some situations in life, particularly when we're younger, fear is all we know. We have to fight or flight. We have to run. We have to get out. But as we get older in life and we start to evolve and grow and we have a career and we have our friends and our colleagues, and then we want a relationship and an intimate relationship, that these patterns, these fears, all human beings have inside of them, and eventually they're going to come out. And these fears are all based in what I call the 4 aspects of feeling. And so by learning how to work with these 4 aspects of feeling, knowing what they are, knowing how to treat each of them as an individual, the body sensations, the emotions, the beliefs in the mind, and the spiritual quality or the states that we experience inside, by learning how to develop a relationship to each of these individual bodies, we then begin to communicate with these inner parts of ourselves. And when we communicate with these inner parts of ourselves, and the inner parts are communicating with their own inner parts, say the inner male, the inner female, the inner child, when these parts are all communicating in some kind of synthesis or harmony or unity, or they're just communicating, then things go better on the inside. When things aren't happening inside, my inner female, my male, my child is having a bad day, well then I'm having a bad day and I project that into the world. So I began to realize that what I needed to do was to go inside myself and to find what was happening there, and to go in with a place of innocence and curiosity and explore what was happening in my body, not with judgment, not with trying to make something go away, but with the attitude of acceptance. And through acceptance came the merging, and through the merging came the healing and the transformation. So that when feelings come up that are difficult or negative, that I don't have to run from them. I can create a space for them, just like a child that's hurt. You don't want to analyze him. That child just needs a hug and need to be told everything's going to be okay. Well, our own inner parts are no different. They need attention, they need compassion, and they need a place where we can accept them. And when we can accept the way we are, we're not that way anymore. Thank you, Brew Joey, for that wonderful quote. And so the journey of healing for me has been about understanding body chemistry, looking at how healthy is the blood, what does the hair analysis look like. And whenever I see a client, I'm always focused on the physiology, and I like to send them to a good iridologist, nutritionist, and get their body and their health somewhat stable. Because to go in and do the deeper level of healing and transformational work, we have to have strength. We have to have stability. We can't be a psychopathic mess and pretend that we're going to go in and heal feelings. It's not going to happen. What we need is strength and stability to go in and meet those feelings and embrace them, so that we can go through the process of the alchemy of transformation and what love does in a level of complete acceptance for whatever we feel. And this is what I've learned in my own healing journey. And being the emotional type man, and here's a picture of my eyes on the screen right now. You can see all of lacuna. There are a couple of sora in there. So emotions became a very, very, very big part of my life. And it's my firm conviction that it's the feeling level, which once again are the body sensations, the emotions, the beliefs, and the states, that every physical injury, every disease, every trauma, every accident always has a personality or a behavioral component that's actually contributing to the original owie. And so when we go in and treat the biochemistry, and then we treat the psyche in these ways and means and tools and structures that I've learned over the years, we can take we can take healing to a new place in the body where we become more vibrant, more healthy. But what really happens is we have a better relationship to ourselves. We're not so afraid of our own fears. And then when we become more empowered and have a greater self-esteem and greater confidence, we take that into the world to develop better human relationships with coworkers, with family, and with your partner. So everything is about relationships, whether they're the relationships of me to my inner parts, or me to you, or me to my beloved. It's all a relationship, and they are always the reflection of self. And when I'm able to work with myself, when I'm able to love and embrace my own feelings without judgment, people don't even know you're doing it at a party. I can go into experiences and no one even knows. Just because we're having emotions doesn't mean we have to act emotionally. And so this is what I've learned through this process. This is the work of behavioral iridology. It's looking at the journey of the soul. It's looking at the path we've chosen. It's looking at the influences of our family tree, our specific place in the birth order, and the eyes, and what they tell us about the specific life lessons that we've signed up to learn. And when we can embrace this learning and this modality, this family structure, this DNA, and this great big picture called life, with a loving kind of an innocence and a curiosity, and to move into it with, wow, how can I learn here? How can I grow there? It's not about fixing something. It's not that you're wrong, and it's not that you're broken. It's just that we're learning to grow and love things that we once feared. And that's the key to life. To love what we once feared is the opening that will transform ourselves and those around us. So in these following presentation, I'm going to share with you the different aspects of behavioral iridology, which have to do with our family tree, our birth order, and our eyes. I'm going to go over some of the therapeutics, about the things that I see that actually work and make changes in myself, my clients, and have worked for a number of years. Let's go on the journey together. Within the behavioral iridology model, there are 4 basic categories or aspects of how this model seeks to help people empower themselves in their lives. We have the influences that are coming from our family tree, that are in our DNA. We have a specific birth order position that we're born into, and how our body goes yin or yang, how it gains weight or loses weight, vitality or loses vitality. We also have the iris patterns, and the iris patterns have a lot to do with the specific journey and lessons and the specific qualities of your behavior and personalities and who you're going to attract for a long-term relationship. The 4th level of behavioral iridology has to do with the combined effects of a family tree, a birth order, and an iris pattern create experiences in our life. And what gives life to those experiences are how we feel about them, or how we respond or react when a new experience is happening, whether it's joyful and happy and playful and powerful and loving, or whether it's traumatic and tragic. It's the feelings that are generated that give that experience its weight or its value. So when we deal with these feelings, it's important to understand that there are 4 different levels of feeling. And I can tell you that the most important thing that the behavioral iridology model stands for is the ability, the willingness, the philosophy, and the goal to develop a relationship to your feeling body. This isn't about trying to make something go away. This isn't about trying to take your pain and reframe it or reprogram it. It's not about trying to keep something from happening. It's about learning to be present, and when something comes up called a feeling, that you are willing to experience it and deal with it in a healthy way. Because resistance to feeling, denial from feeling, actually perpetuates our suffering, because through the denial we attract more situations to us to evoke those feelings so they can be experienced and accepted and moved into a greater place of wholeness. So healing is not about making your feelings go away and, oh my gosh, no more of that darn anger or sadness and, oh, I can't believe I'm not lonely anymore. No, the idea is you'll never make a feeling go away. You can temporarily through sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever you like, but the fact is feelings are infinite and they're made of life force energy. And when they're experienced consciously, they vitalize the human body. They bring its life force back and they improve the quality of your life. Just because you move into a feeling doesn't mean you need to stay stuck with it. I've watched people grieve and go through feelings that, oh, I've been in feelings for weeks and months and years and I haven't been able to get over the loss of my loved one or my father or my mother. And it's because they never move into a complete merging with the experience. And I'll explain that later. But it's easy to dwell in the emotional goo. What takes more consciousness is to focus on it, deal with it therapeutically, and embrace it and create the transformation that occurs when you deal with feelings consciously. So let's go over the 4 levels of feeling, and they're on the slide on the screen right now. The first level has to do with body sensations. And these are the physical body sensations that are typified by the neurogenic fibers. The next are the emotions in the body. And the emotions come through the lacuna, the right brain, the feminine, and are identified by rounded openings in the eyes. The next level of feeling has to do with the mind or self-images. And self-images are thoughts or beliefs about who we think we are based on certain experiences. Basically, when an infant is born, they're reflecting and putting out all of this light and love into the world. When that light and love isn't reflected back to them, they think something's wrong with me, and all human beings develop what's called belief systems, which complete the statement, I am blank. And it's usually there's something wrong with me because my love isn't, or my light isn't being reflected back to me. And so those self-images can be very painful, and they are more prone to those people that have the psora or the dotted pigmentations in the eyes. That's the 3rd level of feeling. The 4th level of feeling has to do with the soul and the inner masculine and the inner feminine, and that is in relationship to the pupil of the eye. The 4th level of feeling has to do with states. And states are the experiences through the soul identified by the pupil, and these are the aspects of our inner male and inner female, Mother God, Father God, and their experiences. They don't necessarily experience the thoughts, the emotions, or the sensations of the body. They experience states. One of the most powerful states in the feminine is the state of separation. And one of the most powerful ones in the masculine is the state of isolation. So these states are just states to the soul, are the beliefs to the mind, which are the emotions to the feminine. And these are the 4 levels of feeling in the body. The idea and the goal is to develop a relationship to each part of myself, my inner masculine, my inner feminine, my inner child, and my inner male and female. And by developing and learning to communicate with these parts of myself, I give expression to the feelings that these bodies have been harboring for lifetimes. And it's through expression and through moving the energy through the body that they become free, and they actually will release their healing qualities in the body. Then our next level is to get the inner parts to communicate with each other. It's like developing a family inside. And the greater the harmony and the cooperation and the synergy between our inner parts, the more peace we have inside, and the more we create happy, loving relationships on the outside. What happens inside happens outside, and what's happening on the outside we find inside. And so becoming more whole is the goal of dealing with the psyche, the personality, and the intangible parts of our feeling body. And when we develop a healthy relationship, these parts don't need to scream out or act out, but are given a place within our own lives to express and experience, and we get their gifts. which is peace and joy and happiness and no more pain in the body. So in this next slide, we're going to see how these 4 feeling bodies are actually identified in the iris of the eye. So in this iris at the upper left, you can see the sora, or the self-images. They are the masculine aspect. Below that, we have lacuna, which are the feminine, and the right brain and the emotional body. We will cross the slide on the bottom over to the neurogenic fibers, where you get the sensations in the body. The sensations are anything from pain, muscle spasms, twitches, coldness, any kind of communication that the body gives us through the sensational body. And then of course we have the pupil, which is the soul, which is experiencing the states. And these 4 aspects of feeling are actually in the iris of the eye. It's a beautiful map, and it's confirmation that these 4 levels of feeling are actually real in a human body. At least they are for me. In this next slide, we get to see 4 individual representations, once again breaking this down. The neurogenic fibers having to do with the sensations in the physical body. The dotted pigmentations or sora have to do with the mental body, thoughts and beliefs about who we think we are. Lacuna and rounded opening, the third one down, has to do with the feminine, the emotional body. And the last one, the pupil, the states, the experiences of the inner male and the inner female. So these 4 bodies, and by looking at the iris patterns, we can see which structural components are in which areas of the eye, which we'll go into later in this presentation, which will help us to identify the different lessons and experiences we're likely to have in life that are going to produce the feelings that then we will need to develop a relationship to. And the greater that relationship, the easier and better our life becomes. On to the next slide. There is a specific relationship that's been occurring between the masculine and the feminine, the dotted pigmentations and the rounded openings. This is, you could call it the war, you could call it the confusion between the masculine and the feminine. It has to do with our mind's desire to know and understand, to be in control, to not experience anything that it doesn't recognize or hasn't already experienced. Well, emotions are just the opposite. They're spontaneous. They're unpredictable. They're intense. They're melancholy. They're all of it. And so that the unpredictability of the feminine makes the masculine extremely uncomfortable. And so he wants to control it. He wants to understand it. And one of the greatest patterns I see in human behavior and human coping mechanisms are the way the mind, the minute we start to have a negative or a painful emotional experience, the mind immediately wants to jump in and understand it, figure it out, what happened, why. And when you can come to an understanding about why you're experiencing these feelings, there's a rest, there's a relaxation, because now I understand it. And the mind then can begin to produce thoughts and experiences. We're not going there, we're not doing that. And will start to protect you from getting involved in situations where that painful emotion could come up again because it doesn't want to experience it. And this creates deeper and deeper levels of denial. It shuts the heart down and allows the left logical scientific mind to rule, which can be a real problem in relationships because you can only go so far with talking. True bonding and true intimacy in a relationship come through experiences of the heart. And if the mind is running your life and your heart is shut down, relationships will be a challenge. And so even for the feminine emotional type, all of those emotions are hard to deal with. And so she naturally will become more logical. We'll go over this in hemispheric dominance. So the point of the matter is that when the male can own, or the analytical thinking type can own the fact that they have these self-images and beliefs about their self. They may not have these huge emotional charges, but they need to feel the beliefs about themselves and the Emotional type people need to go into the emotions. It's not that emotional types don't have belief systems and the thinking analytical type doesn't have emotions, but the primary way that you can talk to these people and access them therapeutically, and the way I do it in a consultation, is honoring them based on their iris structure, not asking a thinking analytical man to go into his emotions. He's going to look at you like, what? Are you crazy? Why? But when you go in through the belief systems and acknowledge the mind, he will get it or she will get it instantaneously. So developing that relationship between the inner male and the female, neither one of them is right, neither one of them is wrong, but honoring the gifts they bring to the table and seeing them as equal and having equal value will bring a harmony and a synthesis to your own inner male and female, which can only bring you more peace and happiness inside and create better relationships in your own life. All right, on to the next slide. In this slide, we have the gift of the neurogenic fibers. And the neurogenic fibers bring form to the spiritual aspect of ourselves. The body shows us what all of these feelings do. The body gives us a physical representation through a rash, a temperature, a disease pattern, a headache, a spasm, or whatever it is. The body is constantly showing us what's happening in the unseen worlds, the world of thought, the world of emotion, the world of states. And it is a great service that our human bodies provide to the spiritual evolution of all of creation to allow these more etheric experiences to take form so that we can take a greater responsibility for them, and we can see how negative thinking and negative emotions create depression and frustration and isolation, and we can see how happiness and joy creates more vitality, more friends, and frankly, a better life. And so we have to thank the physical body for showing the soul, the mind, and the emotional body what's happening in 3D reality, so we as human beings can take a greater level of responsibility for it and engage in the lessons that each of these experiences have to teach us, and by gaining that understanding, literally work on becoming more whole and healing ourselves from the inside. In this next section, we're going to talk about the 6 brothers and the 6 sisters and how they, for me, are the ultimate 12-step program. They represent a blueprint of life, and they teach us how to move and flow through life in a conscious way that allows us to accomplish anything. Wow, let's look at that. All right, let's first start by looking at the slide in front of you, where you'll see 6 triangles on the left and 6 circles on the right. The triangles are boys. The colors represent the side of their family they're from. So the firstborn son is a blue triangle coming from the mother's side of the family, and the secondborn son is red coming from the father's side. And as you can see, they alternate in polarities. The same is true on the 6 sisters, where you have starting with the number 1 girl that is red coming from the father's mother, going to the secondborn girl that comes from the mother's mother, or blue. And so these alternating polarities are the cycles of life that are necessary to engage in to keep us in balance and harmony. And I'll explain that in a little bit. So each of the 6 brothers and each of the 6 sisters have a specific influence where they derive a great part of their personality, and that's coming from the family tree. And in this next slide, I'll show you that connection. So as you can see, each of the 6 brothers on the left and the 6 sisters on the right, all the reds go up and follow to their corresponding number in red. All the blue triangles and circles go to a corresponding blue circular triangle on the mother's side of the family. And these are once again polarities. The mother's side of the family has a tendency to get us to allow, feel, ask us to let go, and clarify the mind. The father's side of the family has to do with bringing spiritual things into form. So The father side of the family has to do with the concrete world, authority, big buildings, money, health in the body, and becoming more grounded and stable on planet Earth. So the father's side grounds us, the mother's side opens us. And each of these 6 brothers and 6 sisters come from a specific grandparent. And in the next slide, let's look at how to do that. So in this slide, we can see that the firstborn son comes through the mother's father. This means that he derives a great part of his personality and inspirational influences from this man. The second triangle below, the number 2, comes directly from the father's father. And each one of these grandparents represent a specific quality. In this case, it has to do with courage and determination. And so the third born son is going to come from the mother's father. So all sons come from grandfathers and all daughters come from grandmothers, which means once again that they derive a great part of their personality and will tend to live out certain things and attitudes in their life that their corresponding grandparent did. So understanding that grandparent based on your birth order position will help you understand influences that are likely going to come into your life based on the history of your family lineage. In this next slide, let's go over the energies of the 6 sisters. And this is just a very brief exposure because each one of these sisters and each one of these brothers, they have specific gifts you can give them, specific nature qualities, they have personality qualities, they have what happens when they're stressed. They're like little personas unto themselves, but they also represent a series of energies that when linked together form a blueprint of evolution, which allows us to move through life in an organized way. And I'll go over that in a little bit. But the specific qualities of the sisters are as follows. The number 1 girl at the bottom of the family, she's the will to live, and she's the mama bear. Number 2 girl is sensitive to feelings and emotions. So the red ones become more practical and about sustaining life, and the blue ones become about feeling and moving feelings and energy through the body. Then 3 girl takes the energy of 1 girl and 2 girl and takes it to a new level of health and healing in the body, because now we add the life force of emotion to the energy of the will to live, and we take health to a new level in 3 girl. 4 girl is the place between your shoulder blades. She's the part of the heart that receives everything. She's unconditional love. She has no judgment. 4 girl is one of my most favorite of all of the birth order and the ancestral positions because it's about receiving without judgment, the willingness to feel. She's really the essence of the embodiment work, the ability to feel without judgment, which is so powerful and potent. And it acts as a judgment taints things. It brings the ego in. It's the perceptions, it is the beliefs in the mind. It is our own pain. And when we add pain to this beautiful scale of evolution, it taints it, it clouds it. So the blue birth order positions purify through feeling so that when we get up to the 5 girl, we have a level of compassion for all living beings. And that compassion for all living beings takes us to 6 girl, which is an experience of oneness, or the unified field of the all or the one. It is silence. She is truly the experience of the unity of all living things. Next we have the 6 brothers. Number 1 son is about inspiration. Once again, he is blue, he is more yin, he's more delicate. And so he's the inspired thought. And then when you go to 2 boy, you get all of this emotional determination that happens in 2 boy that gives fuel to that original thought to let it move forward. So then it goes into 3 boy, which has to do with planning and strategizing and organizing that original inspiration that now has additional life force from the determination of the 2 boy that allows it to form a plan, a blueprint, if you will. That blueprint is then taken into the world by 4-boy. 4-boy is, oh, he's one of my favorites. He's Santa Claus. He's charisma. He's generosity. He's the one that wants to be on stage. He's the one that takes the inspiration that came from one with the added life force, and he takes it out into the world and he shows everybody, hey, look at this, and he gets people excited. He creates alliances. He creates people coming together in cooperation and synergy. 4-boy is really powerful. Then it goes into 5-boy, which is going to cleanse any of the ego or greed or need to be the only one on stage from 4-boy, and goes through a purifying phase through divine perfection, which divine perfection means a plan that serves everyone's needs. So it's a win-win situation, which is really important in the higher levels of consciousness to avoid political overthrows, governments that are only for themselves, that are going against their people, corruption, and all of the things that we see today in some of the higher forms of government and even in religion, where people have misused power. So 5 is a purifying state that cleanses all of that ego stuff out of there, that takes us into 6-boy, which is mastery of physical form. In this next slide, we get to look at the ultimate 12-step process or program that I like of how these siblings work with each other, how they influence each other, how they evolve each other, how they grow each other, and how they are an organized plan of evolution, or a blueprint that allows anything to go through 12 stages of development, so that when it gets to the level of mastery or form, it's in a pure, unadulterated state. Like I said, that fear is gone, the ego's gone, the greed is gone, and whatever we're creating is not only benefiting myself, but is benefiting everyone. So everyone gets to win. And that's the mark of something that's done in consciousness, where there's no greed, there is no hierarchy. People aren't dominating and controlling others, but we're all evolving together as one humanity, which is, I think, the original intention of this giant experiment called humanity. And so let's look at this slide carefully. 1-boy is pure thought. He's the inspiration. That energy goes across over to 1-girl, where she is planted in the earth. She's the mineral kingdom, and she gives it life force and grounds it like roots of a tree into the earth. Then that tree needs water, so it's got to go up to 2-girl. Remember, emotions are water. And 2-girl brings water to the equation. She brings life force to the equation to get that tree to grow, that original thought and inspiration. Once that starts to grow, it goes over into 2-boy, where 2-boy adds more life force so that that little sprout, that little seedling, can really begin to pop up out of the earth into 3-boy. 3-boy is about planning and organizing that energy again. So when it goes over to 3-girl, it can go back into nourishment of the body that's pure, disease-free, pain-free, ego-free, and lets us go to that level into 3-girl, which allows it to manifest into deeper form again. And as you notice, each time something goes into form, it goes into a level of purification. And that's the beauty of what the birth order gives us. We always have to purify every time we gain strength or power to mitigate the forces that would take us in a direction that would just benefit ourselves, or hurt somebody, or hurt someone else, or even hurt ourselves. And so we go up to 4-girl once again, that purifies it through the love of the heart, that allows that energy to go over to 4-boy, that's now going to take it out into the world through charisma and excitement and joy, bring it onto stage to share it with the world, that then goes back up to 5-boy through this mental level of purification, taking out any plans that would only benefit a few, and then going over into the love and compassion to now take this out into the physical world at a whole nother level, with not only the charisma and joy of 4-boy, but the compassion of 5-girl. Compassion here means the ability to feel other people's feelings. It's not about pity, it's not about feeling sorry, it's about recognizing that these feelings are really where people are at, and when you connect with their feelings, you connect with them without judgment, and there's a healing that takes place when that happens. 5 girl then goes up to 6 girl. And when we have that level of compassion and are willing to feel those feelings, we enter into a kind of a unified state. Without judgment, we get to experience the all, the unified experience of oneness. And that oneness and connection to all of creation allows us then to move into mastery at a level that allows the original thought of one boy to move into physical form in a mastered form of something that is doesn't need a warranty because it's going to last forever. It's flawless in how it works. It doesn't have planned obsolescence in it. It's a functioning, beautiful, thriving experience, because each time it grew, it purified, and then it grew, and then it purified. And this level of going from yin to yang, mother's side to father's side, purification to build, to back to purification, to building again, is a beautiful process of self-cleansing that allows things to evolve at a more natural state that's in harmony with natural principles and laws that assures its longevity into perpetuity. And so the 6 brothers and the 6 sisters offer us not only specific personality qualities that are our social skills, because each one of these specific birth order sequences or birth order positions has a specific social skill. These are the skills that you use to interact with your siblings or in society. And so we get those personal skills from the birth order, but we also get a specific gift and a quality in our personality of what that birth order position brings. But that birth order position is a stepping stone to a higher place. So we get to see the evolutionary process of where we were born into the family and what's being called. And when we get to 6, we have to recycle around back up to 1 and go through the sequence. And whenever you go through all 12 of those consciously, you will have something that is in a very beautiful conscious state, which is truly the gift that the birth order gives us. In this section, I want to talk about the influences coming from our family tree. Our ancestors represent the default programming that's in our DNA. And if we choose to lead a life of melancholy or take it as it comes and don't take a proactive or some level of a conscious attitude about living in life and learning and growing, then we are destined to repeat the errors and the problems and the challenges that existed in our previous generations. So they offer us great insights, and our family tree helps us to see the path that we're on. It helps us to uncover the lessons that we're on, and it helps us to see where we need to put our time and energy. And the way this happens, unfortunately, is through different kinds of accidents, diseases, and major traumas that occur in your life. And so we can look at these things. They don't just happen by accident. They're called accidents, but I actually prefer to call them on purposes, because what it means is that each accident has a specific set of learning and lessons and energetics that are deriving it, that are creating the pain and the suffering that we're experiencing. So we're really not destined to suffer, we're really destined to grow. And what we can use the family tree for, and I'm going to show you in these upcoming slides, is how we can use the grandparents and the timing of things that occur in our lives and even the location of injuries to determine what is the lesson that's knocking at our door, that's saying, hey, look at me, and how can we then once again engage consciously in learning. So as you're beginning to see and hear that behavioral iridology is really about bringing the unconscious, or what's stored deep in the unknown, in the mystery, the skeletons in the closet, not to mention the things that we do know, is about bringing these things out, because they do come out throughout our lives. And instead of being victims or feeling victimized, we can say, wow, this is an opportunity to better my life. In fact, the way I see it, all conflict, all challenges, all obstacles that present themselves on the path of life and our journey are literally opportunities to open, grow, evolve, and better ourselves and increase our health and well-being. So this system really allows us to take a proactive role in life and learning. And the grandparents offer some very specific timelines and locations and lessons that when brought to our attention, we can embrace. Not only that, there is a heightened state to the grandparents which has to do with a spiritual perfection or an evolved state that they represent. Regardless of their personality, this higher dimensional or perfected state, we could call it divine perfection, exists. Is that a little cosmic? Is that a little woo-woo? Well, we could say it is, but yet we could also say that there is a level of divinity someplace where there isn't pain and suffering. I've been there. I've experienced it. I'm aware of it. And what I am seeking to do in my own life is help to make that reality this reality in this body. And when I have, and at times that I have, it brings great joy and happiness, and things go really well when I'm in that place. So when I'm not in that place, I make these videos so we can all hope to get back there someday into the center of the heart and the love that we're destined to be. So let's go into this first slide on the grandparents. So the grandparents represent the default programming that's in us, and they also represent a timeline, as I said, so that when you have a max accident or a major injury or a life-changing event, that there's a chart that I'll show you in a moment that will show us which grandparents are being accessed and what the lessons are. We also are able to use the different strengths of the glands and the organs and the systems that correlate specifically to the grandparents. And so when we have a pancreatitis, or when we have a liver issue, or when we have something in our endocrine system, or any part of the human body that has an imbalance, it's all related to an energetic that's based in a grandparent energy. And here are the slides that show that. This is the timelines. So I just take the age that something happened, and I look and see what the grandparent influences are. And the energy of that grandparent helps me understand what the lesson is. In the next slide, we have the body correspondence chart. So if you have an injury on a certain place, an arm or a leg or any place on the body, once again, those are in relationship to ancestral parts. And so we can correlate where the injury is and what it is to that area of the body, and once again gain a great or deeper learning of the lesson that we're being asked to learn. So it's the lesson, the unresolved lesson, that's actually creating the trauma. And that's the important thing to remember. So it's not just about making it go away and healing it up. It's about saying, wow, how did I create that? What's my part in it? And what do I need to learn and grow and experience so that I don't have to have pain and suffering in my body? That's the real goal of this, is to go beyond the pain and embrace the heart. But we all came here to learn. We all came here to grow. And that's part of the journey of life. So this is designed to make it more conscious and more malleable, in a sense, easier to work with, easier to embrace. And so that's what the grandparents offer us. Let's go to the next slide, which is the glandular balance. Once again, these are the glandular systems that are tied into the grandparent energies. And in the next slide, we go to the organs and strengths. And so once again, we can see when we have a owie here or an organ happening or dysfunctioning, we can once again find the energy that it's in relationship to. So we can use the grandparents as a way to lead us in the direction of what we're being called to understand, to grok, to really comprehend. And then so we can take and make choices for happy outcomes. There's a whole nother side to the grandparents that they represent, and that goes back to that spiritually perfected state I was talking about. One of the things that's interesting is there are 12 grandparents and there are 12 meridians. I've correlated those 12 grandparents and meridians through Chinese medicine. We've done some integrations with them. It's quite profound. But the other side is to see our grandparents as alive and living. And so each of the grandparents has a spiritual quality, if you will. And in this following slide, we can go over those. And you can see on this slide that the father's father is courage, the father's mother is the will, the father's father's father is prosperity, father's mother, number 3, is stability. Father's mother's father is power. That's the 6th triangle. And father's mother's mother is philanthropy. She's compassion. On the mother's side, we have the mother's father, which is inspiration, number 1. The mother's mother, which is peace. The mother's mother's mother, which is grace. The mother's mother's father, the 3 triangle, is clarity. The mother's father's mother is oneness. And the mother's father's father is truth. So these are just single words that they use to describe these. There's whole levels of embracing them and understanding them and taking these words and expanding them and growing them within our bodies that helps us to embrace their spiritual quality, which helps us to integrate that as we go spend time meditating, meeting, thinking about. If you have a picture of them, you can hang it up, but you can hold your grandparent in that place of this realized state, which will actually start to become your reality of them living in your body. What's going to be really important to recognize in this slide is the very special relationship between if we go to the father's side and we go up to the number 1 circle, we see the father's mother, her relationship to her parents, which are the number 6 triangle and number 5 circle. And there's a special relationship between the 2 triangle and the 3 and the 4. The 4 triangle and the 3 circle. And we have that same relationship on the blue side. And if we break those down, they represent 4 aspects of our life that become keynotes of what we are to master or learn in our own personal development. And they're depicted on this next slide. So if we start in the middle of the slide and we can look at the 2 upside down triangles, we see the 1 at the bottom, whether it's a 1 red circle or a 1 blue triangle, and then the 5 and the 6 at the top. The 1, or the 1 position in the birth order, or the mother's father, or the father's mother, both of these represent the self. They're the number 1. And the self is all about me. And it's my relationship to everyone and everything, group dynamics, authority. It has to do with my career and my identity. 1 is about the self. And the greatest challenge we face here on earth, I believe, as a humanity, is I believe every human being is dealing with and learning about who am I? What am I? What do I stand for? It's called self-esteem, self-worth. You could call it worthiness. You could call it feeling lovable. You can call it self-confidence. You can call it inner strength. It's all these words that comprise this part of ourself that's our character. And this is who we are and what we stand for. It's not our identity. It is actually what we stand for. And are we willing to stand in our own truth? Remember, 5 is about truth. Are we willing to stand in our own truth and be willing to take criticism, judgment? Look at all the geniuses in this planet that have been called crazy when Galileo said the world is round, it's not flat. And so what does public opinion do when you stand on your own 2 feet and claim your power? Can you stand in that power? Can you have your confidence and not need to be codependent and have other people approve of you or appreciate you or recognize you or celebrate you? But can you do it from your own place of truth and that be enough? Wow, that's a tall order. And especially when we're dealing with groups, the government, religious groups, any authority. So the number 1 position is about standing in our power. And so when we look at the relationship between the mother's father and the father's mother to their parents, it helps us to see that level of confidence that's coming down to us and what their lives were like. When we go to the outside of this slide, we get the 2, 3, 4 combination in both the red and the blue. Well, once you develop a relationship to self, which is called self-love, which means no matter what you think, I still care about me, and I'm not going to change my opinion. I'll listen, I'll have compassion, I'll feel what you're feeling, but you're not going to use shame or guilt to talk me into or make me compromise myself. The third way we can utilize the energies of the grandparents for our benefit and our healing is to group them together into the paternal and maternal grandfathers, the paternal and maternal grandmothers. And when you group these energies together, it creates these specific kinds of energetics. So in this slide, you can see that specific birth order positions are tied in to these pairings, or they're actually 3 levels of paternal and maternal grandmothers and grandfathers. And if you're a firstborn son, you're going to be naturally drawn to the maternal grandfathers. A firstborn daughter is going to be naturally drawn to the maternal grandmothers. And so these 4 energies represent different aspects of life. They have to do with building vitality in the body, which are the paternal grandmothers. The maternal grandmothers are about letting go and releasing and dissolving energy, transformation. The maternal grandfathers are all about inspiration, thought, and manifesting creativity through an open mind that doesn't have prejudice. And so it's about mental clarity and sharpness, that inspiration that pierces through the veil of illusion. And the paternal grandfathers have to do with power and force, and they're on the far left of the screen with the reds and the golds and the purple. And so they have to do with power in the physical world. So once again, these 4 energies can be used, and just because we come from a certain birth order position means that that line is a powerful line in us. But one of the places that we did a lot of work in Denny's work with this was working primarily with the grandmothers, using the maternal grandmothers to dissolve and helping us work with our feelings and to accept and to go through transformations through unconditional love of everything we were feeling, and the grounding nature of the paternal grandmothers that build vitality in the human body. So this is a way to heal the body, to strengthen the body, and to allow ourselves to use their manifested gifts in the spiritual realm to improve the quality of our own lives. So this is an overview of the grandparents. This isn't even all of the information I would like to present, but for the purposes of this video, I'm hoping to expose the absolute potential, the viability, and the information that lies in our past generations, so we can change the future. And what we're really doing when we do this work and we go in and work with these energies and change them within ourselves, we're changing and helping our children, and we're actually affecting our unborn generations to come. These lessons in our family that have been going on for generations require our attention. Denial and abstinence and alcoholism and all the things that have happened are just cover-ups. And now the rubber's meeting the road, and now we have an opportunity to move and grow and evolve at levels that have never been possible on this planet. It's a really exciting time. And by working with these grandparent energies, as well as some of the other things we do, changes are sure to come in your life, in my life, and in all of ours. What a great journey. In this next section, we're going to talk about and show some iris patterns. And on your screen right now, you're seeing a variety of iris patterns passing in front of you. Just notice how no 2 eyes are the same. No 2 people are the same. Notice the variations. Notice the colors. Notice the structural components. Eyes are like mandalas and snowflakes. Each one is unique. Each person is unique. There are some key components that we can derive through the personality by looking at the iris type. We get to look at their primary type, whether they're more thinking, analytical, or emotional and feeling. We can see if they're more introverted or extroverted, which is how they process information. We can look at right and left brain dominance, which is how the hemispheres of the brain actually influence the body and our personalities. We also get to look at the iris positions, where there are the specific life lessons that each of us chose. And based on our primary type, we get to look at relationship dynamics. And because there are only 2 primary types of personalities that all people fit into, according to this model, that those 2 types, in my experience, attract each other 85 to 90% of the time in relationships, which, by the way, is a subject of my new book coming out this fall on intimacy and iris patterns. So look forward to that one. I am. So the eyes give us a snapshot into the journey of the soul. Remember, the pupil is the soul. And so the eyes can show us a great deal about ourselves very specifically. So let's go to the next slide. Structurally, within this model, there are 3 structural components that are identified in the iris of the eye. The first one, which is the upper left of your screen, has to do with the dotted pigmentations that stimulate the left and logical brain and are masculine. And on the right side of the screen, we have rounded openings that are lacuna that stimulate the feeling body, the emotional body, and the right brain. And so these 2 primary types are the key types. But there is a third structural component, and that component is at the bottom of the screen, and those are the neurogenic fibers. And neurogenic fibers are the white little lines that emanate from the pupil like spokes out of a wheel, and they have to do with empathy and sensitivity. They are neutral, so they are modifiers. I do not look at them as a personality type, but a modifier of either the thinking, analytical, or emotional feeling type. So they add sensitivity. Let's look at each of those a little more in depth. So as I was saying, these 2 primary types are opposite each other. They're medicine for each other. And what that means is that each of them has the qualities that the other aspires to for greater wholeness. So I would like to take this time to say, you are not your iris structure. Your iris structure is like a vehicle of expression. It's the way you're going to naturally respond to a given set of stimuli based on the wiring, almost like the hard drive in your computer. The real beauty of this work is that the goal is to become your opposite iris type. That means to learn about the qualities, the behaviors, the disposition, how they process, and incorporate the type that's opposite to you into your personality consciously. What does that do? It creates wholeness. Because what you're going to do naturally is attract that opposite type into your life for an intimate relationship. And that's one of the reasons that relationships are so challenging, is because we're so different. And when we can learn to embrace our differences, when we can learn to practice the behaviors of our opposite type, it gives us a greater wholeness. We're not so confined and we're not so put into a narrow box of how we can be, but we're open to move and flow through life in a more dynamic way, which makes life easier and better to live and be in, and our relationships get better too. Yes. And so we're learning to become more whole and learning to experience what our opposite type is that allows us to be the better type that we intrinsically are. It adds wholeness to us. And in fact, it's not just our opposite, it's all the patterns. It's all the iris structures. And one of the great joys that I've gotten over the years of doing consultations is when I go to do a consultation on somebody that's, say, very sensitive and introverted, I slow my cadence down, I lower my voice, we go slower, it's more methodical, and I get to honor their disposition. And if I'm with somebody that has a wilder, more dynamic, extroverted type, then I can bring some of my passion in and we can go a little faster. Yeah, and let's get to that. And so it allows me to adjust my personality to meet theirs, which does nothing but create greater rapport. And it's also been the opportunity for me to be able to practice the other iris structures as a way to enhance my own self. And so these 2 opposite types are what makes the world go round. They are the left brain, they are the right brain. They are the masculine thinking and the emotional and feeling. And let's go into them with just a little more detail here. So the emotional type is identified by these rounded openings. Their specific location has to do with specific life lessons we'll go over later. But the fact is, these are containers of emotional energy. And what it means is that people that have a lot of lacuna in the eyes, it basically means they have a lot of feelings, they have a lot of creativity, they have a lot of ideas. You can read some of the terms below. When they're in balance, their natural state, when they become unbalanced, what their gifts and lessons are. But this type has a desire to be seen. They want to connect in the heart. They want hugs. They want to embrace. They want to feel close in the heart. They want to feel close in a human body. And so they're compassionate, heart-centered people. They will give you the shirt off their back. They have a lot of needs, which is not a needy thing to say. It's an important thing to say, because many times this type, through the process of behavior modification that comes through hemispheric shifting that we'll talk about later, these types start to switch or morph into their opposite type. So the emotional type can become independent and self-reliant, but all along there's this part of them that wants to connect in the heart, and they want to have some cuddles, okay? And so if you start to deny your needs, then you become emotionally charged. You become angry, sad, depressed, blaming, because your needs aren't getting met and you're there for other people, especially if you're a firstborn girl. 85% of the firstborn girls have an iris pattern that has lacuna in the eyes and are the emotional type. And so, maybe it was only 80%, but it's a high number. And so it's important to be able to take ownership for the fact that, wow, I do have these needs. And these are the needs that are represented in the inner child. And by the way, they don't go away. And so the reason that adults act like children in relationships is because their inner children are not been parented. And they're stuffed inside their bodies. Their lid has been put on them. They've been spanked. They've been hurt. They've been told not to express. And all of those feelings are sitting inside them. So then when they get in a relationship later in life, these child parts come out and think, oh, here's my mommy, here's my daddy, you're going to take care of me. And when you don't, well, that's a good excuse for a temper tantrum, isn't it? And we all know what that does in relationships. So it's really important for people with the emotional type to really take a responsibility, which is a big key life lesson, for what they're feeling, what they need, and recognize that the exterior world and others aren't always going to be there for themselves, that they need to go inside, they need to go into their own hearts, they need to deal with their own emptiness and loneliness and merge with it and find a deeper grounding and a connection to the earth that will allow them to feel the safety, the security that they long for in human relationships. So once again, if we're not getting it on the inside, we try to get it on the outside. The outside and the external environment usually lets us down. And so then we have an emotional reaction, and then on goes the cycle. So we get to break that whole pattern now by understanding how this most powerful lacuna works in the psyche, the human body, and through our behaviors. Let's go to the next, to the analytical thinking type. It's represented by these dotted pigmentations. Think of them as focused points of energy. So these are constricted thoughts, if you will. They want to know, they want to understand, they want to explain verbally. These people are precise, they like details, informations, they want facts. They feel safe through understanding, where the emotional type feels safe through hugs. And so completely different way of looking at life. So this type has a need to be right. They usually like to be in control. They need to understand. And when they don't, they can become agitated or frustrated. They would tend to interrupt. They have a tremendous fear because a lot of their personality is derived on this being right, understanding, being the know-it-all, and having the correct information. So making a mistake or a failure, remember the self-images and failure? Those can be so devastating to the analytical thinking type, where the biggest fear for the emotional type is what? If they want cuddles and closeness, it's abandonment and rejection. And so you can see how they have opposite fears, but their fears are just as real to each of them. And it's not like the thinking type doesn't have a fear of abandonment and the emotional type doesn't have a fear of failure or criticism. It's that these are the primary energies that drive this personality type. And so the goal is to go beyond the mind for the thinking type and to get out of the head, to go down into the body, because each time, as you'll see in this image on the screen, that those sora, or those dots in the eyes, they are also in relationship to the neurogenic fibers. So if there are no lacuna, you have to have neurogenic fibers as a foundation or a bed for the dots. And so people that have this, just the dots in the eyes, just the sora and the thinking type, they'll always have the neurogenic fibers, which is a struggle that they deal with between the wisdom or the intuition of their bodies and the mind that wants to control, know, and understand everything logically and linearly. So the lesson to become, get out of the head, go into the body, feel the intuition and feel the body. Lesson of the emotional type. Take those emotions, go inside, and deal with them inside. Feel the pain of those emotions inside so you don't project them outside. Same with the masculine. Different way of going to the same place, to my own inner truth based on going through my feeling body, whether it's self-images or emotions. And in the next slide, we look at the neurogenic fibers. These are the white lines. 95 to 98% of the people have these fibers in the eyes. And once again, they create sensitivity, empathy, they are neutral, and they are the connective tissue of the physical body. So the tighter these fibers are and the more bunched up they get together, the more they create more of a strength in the body, the connective tissue, but they also create more of a constriction in the body, which leads us more over to the thinking and analytical type rather than the sparse weave of the neurogenic fibers that takes us over more into the emotional feeling aspect. So the closeness of the fibers also determines how energy moves through the body. The more distance between the fibers, the more the energy flows through the body. The more constricted the fibers, the more constricted the tissue in the body. And so, once again, it's the body that's going to drive us and lead us to everything we need. It shows us the pain. It shows us where we're doing well. It's our creativity. It's our inspiration. And it's what feels good when it's touched. And so the physical body, or these neurogenic fibers, for me, become the foundation of all of the work of behavioral iridology, because it's the physical body that'll show us where we need to put our attention, what are the lessons we need to look at, and how can we consciously engage in a moving and evolving and growing through that which we've signed up to embrace and feel and master at our own level. Let's look at hemispheric dominance. Because hemispheric dominance is probably one of the most important modifiers of personality. So let's go over it real quick. The left brain is actually on the left side of the head and corresponds to the right eye, which corresponds to the thinking, analytical sora in the eyes. More masculine. Left brain masculine, right eye masculine, dots masculine. They're all in the same category. And on the conversely, the opposite side, the right brain is on the right side of the body. It corresponds to the left eye, the feminine, and the emotional body. And so these hemispheres play a huge role in our personality and how we express ourselves in the world. There are a number of different cycles that a human body goes through on a daily basis or a more long-term basis. There are 90-second cycles, there are 90-minute cycles where we switch from right to left brain. The 90-minute cycles are evidenced by which nostril it's easier to breathe out of. Then there are more long-term cycles that are 3 months to 6 months, and there's even a longer cycle that I think goes to 7, even 10 years. And these different cycles, particularly the long-term cycle of hemispheric movement, is extremely powerful because it has powerful effects on what the body does. So we can say that being drawn to the left brain draws us to the father's side of the family to try to ground ourselves, become more stable, become more certain, raise our levels of self-confidence, self-assuredness, to articulate with words, to take mastery of ourselves in physical form. So moving to the left brain builds energy and vitality in the body. Moving to the right brain does just the opposite. Like going to the mother's side of the family, the mother represents expansiveness and creativity. She's feminine. She wants to grow, expand, evolve, and create something new in each and every moment. So one of the things that the mother side of the family does is it creates a dissolving or a letting go through the feeling body. Remember, all those blue sisters had to do with those deep feelings and the ability for the feelings to flow through the body like water. And so whether it's through the nervous system and beliefs or whether it's through the body and emotions, it does not matter. They're flowing. And so the mother's side of the family teaches us how to let go, allow, and transcend these feelings without effort through acceptance. So by moving a long ways to the right brain, we become more creative, we become more extractual. If we go a long ways to the right brain, we can get a little spacey, we can lose self-confidence, we become more amiable, we don't balance the checkbook, we become scattered. And so these movements, and the body tends to emaciate or become thinner the farther we move to the right brain. So looking at these hemispheric movements, it can tell us what's the body doing, because the body unconsciously will move from one hemisphere to the other, particularly in the long term. And it's those long-term movements that have the most profound effects on the body. So if the body is emaciating and getting thin, I want to know what's pulling them over to the mother's side and what we need to deal with, because if you go too far right brain for too long, it's not healthy. Want to be able to come back to the left brain. And if you're over in the left brain for too long, you become too logical, too linear, you put on too much weight, you become stiff and hardened, and then subjected to the different disease patterns that have to do with arthritis and stiffening and hardening of the body and osteoporosis. And osteoporosis is on the other side, because that's a disintegration of bone. But the bones become rigid and fragile. They become, they break very easy when they become too hard, so they lose their flexibility. So a certain amount of left brain is good, a certain amount of right brain is good. But what we want to do is keep them balanced in a way that allows us to not be locked in either hemisphere, but to go back and forth from each hemisphere as needed in each and every moment. And so there is a long-term pattern that happens where the emotional type person tends to be more right brain. Remember, they're feminine. So that is the right brain moving, which is this eye, is the right brain eye. So what you'll tend to see in this type is you'll tend to see the left eye closing down a little, as you notice mine does, that goes over in to access the left brain. And so that's a very common thing to happen. In the other eye, in the thinking analytical type on this slide, you can see that there are more sora in the eye on the left side of your screen, which is the left brain, the masculine eye. So this is a left brain dominant that is learning to be right brain for long-term movement. And that means getting out of the head, getting into the feeling body. So these hemispheres are actually trying to balance us. But once again, we have to take a proactive role, because if we don't, we'll literally cut off one hemisphere. I'll cut off my logic and organization, become spacey and scattered so I can feel. That doesn't bring us health and well-being. We don't want to cut off our emotional body and be numb to what we feel so that we can become more grounded and stable like the emotional type was do. We want to keep the heart open while learning to ground ourselves into the earth. And that's what it means to evolve consciously. Let's look at the slide on the screen that shows us the long-term movement of the 7 to 10, 12-year cycle that's being shown to us through the half moons in the thumbs. So the half moons in the thumbs are representative of the mother's and the father's side of the family. The right half moon being the father and the left brain, the left half moon being the mother and the right brain. So in this image on the left side of your screen, you can see that the half moon on the left thumb is smaller and the energy has gone over to the right thumb. So this is a shutting down of the right brain and an activating of the left brain, which is a movement that most likely the emotional type would go through. And on the opposite side of the screen, we have the opposite scenario, where you have the half moon taller in the left thumb, which is a movement to the right brain, which means they probably shut down the left brain, or the moon in the right thumb is smaller, and then the half moon in the left thumb becomes taller, which is that movement from left brain to right brain, probably a thinking analytical type. It's a great way, without even looking at the eyes, to have a good indication of where somebody is. Now, if you have a thinking type that is also in the left brain, you have a lot of left brain energy going on, which has specific implications. Same is true if you have a emotional type that has a taller half moon on the left. They're definitely going to be more creative and definitely more spacey and definitely going to need to take some responsibility for themselves, but at least they know they need to. So let's move on to the next thing I look at in hemispheric dominance, which has to do with the eye droop. And the eye droop, as I was saying earlier, is the hemisphere that's closing down. And in this case, I would look at myself and say my right hemisphere, my left eye, is closing down so I can access the logical, grounded, more practical, money part of myself in my left brain. And if the right eye is more closed, as on the image on the lower left-hand side of your screen, this is a shutting down of the masculine or left brain and moving over to the feminine or right brain. And once again, this eye droop thing is pretty consistent throughout somebody's life, and it usually doesn't go back and forth. It's usually one, and that's the primary way that this person is moving hemispherically for long-term balance. I've seen some people stay in a hemisphere for most of their life. I've seen other people vacillate years after years. What we need to learn from this is that our family tree, our mother's side and our father's side, are pulling or pushing us to certain places within ourselves that correspond to places in the family lineage that are seeking resolution. They're seeking healing. They're seeking something that would help them alleviate or deal with all of this denial and pain that's been going on in them, that's definitely going on in me, that as I begin to work this energy, then I get more health and well-being and my life improves. So once again, the body will tell us where we need to go, what it wants us to do, and through this behavioral iridology model, we can identify the specific lessons, the learning, the feelings, and the aspects of what we're calling to us so we can consciously engage in them to do the greatest level of work possible that will allow us the greatest level of change and transformation that will actually stick throughout our lives, and we don't go backwards. This next section is about introversion and extroversion, and it's depicted by the ring that's just outside the pupil of the eye, called the A&W, or the autonomic nerve wreath. The farther that ring is from the pupil, the more extroverted. Extroverted here means that the person processes spontaneously. They go through more mood swings. They have to watch their blood sugar and these types of things. When someone is an introvert, it means that they slow their cadence down. It means that they tend to get overwhelmed easier. I will slow my cadence down. They tend to be more methodical. They would tend to get more frustrated. They would need to isolate, go into their cave, and literally show them grounding techniques or ways to move the energy through the body, because the introvert tends to hold on to things and not process. So getting them to move energy through, getting the extrovert to slow down and not be so reactive. Once again, these patterns are always medicine for each other. So the introvert is teaching the extrovert something, and the extrovert's teaching the introvert something. The left brain is teaching the right brain, and the right brain is teaching the left brain. All of these are in harmony and unison in a conscious person that is seeking to unify these parts of yourself. And the more of these parts you can unify within the self, the better you're going to be, I promise. At the final level of the eyes, what we have are the iris positions. Iris positions are probably my favorite aspect of the eyes. Think of them as life lessons. Think of them as archetypes. These are all personality qualities. They're behavioral qualities. And the interesting part is you will get a lacuna or a sora in a part of the eye, and everybody always asks the question, oh, do the eyes change? Or I got to get rid of that because that's a mark on me or something's wrong with me. But no, no, no. These are your life lessons. There's nothing wrong with anybody or a life lesson. When I read a set of eyes, the challenge for me is to determine where on the ladder of evolution is somebody. So when we look at the different lessons that are indicative of these different iris positions, I can begin to understand how somebody is doing if their lesson is about rejection or if their lesson is about impatience or anger or whatever it is. But recognize that each lesson has a gift. So we're not trying to make anything go away. What we're trying to do is not let the negative side of the lesson run us and rule us and destroy our relationships and ourself and our health. What we're trying to do is learn those lessons so that we can gain the understanding and gain the wisdom of them in order to gain the practical goodness that comes through them. An example would be, most people that are angry, and most of the time when you get angry, it's because there's something that you want that you're not getting. You want to be close. You want somebody to notice you. You want some attention. You want some recognition. You're wanting something from somebody. So you can go off and be angry and blaming and end up pushing them farther away and then even become more frustrated, rageful, and full of hatred when they leave. Or what you can realize is the fact that, wow, I'm feeling angry. I must have this need to feel closer. So instead of projecting all of this anger onto somebody, you could say, wow, I'm really scared right now. I want a hug. Wow, this is a really threatening situation to me. You're acting in the way and I want to be close and I feel like I could actually be hurt. And so rather than attacking or blaming or making somebody wrong, the ability to take ownership of what you want, need, and feel is a way to take power and dominion over your own disposition that hopefully will allow you eventually to get your needs met instead of projecting all the reaction onto somebody else. So each one of these iris positions has a lesson in it. And the ability to look at where the specific sora and lacuna are will tell you in your right eye your relationship to father, men, and the left brain. And in the left eye, you'll see your relationships to mother, the abstractual, and your creative side. And so we get to once again see specific things that we're being asked to engage in learn, be a part of in our lives, to consciously grow with or from, to improve the quality of our lives at all levels. And this is what the eyes bring to us, is a definitive, pure, unobstructed way to look at yourself literally objectively, to see the patterns yourself and says, wow, and see how it's playing itself out so that you can choose to play a proactive role in your life, making it better each and every day. And the final place in eyes I want to talk about are relationship dynamics. I'm not going to go into great detail here, but suffice to say that the analytical thinking type will attract the emotional type 80 or 85% of its time for a long-term relationship. The basic energies of this dynamic is this. The analytical thinking type wants to generally be in control. And the emotional feeling type wants hugs and more closeness. And so the emotional type will do everything it can to get the attention of the thinking type, all the way down to creating all kinds of dramas and traumas and things in order to bring him or her into the equation of closeness, because that's what they want. And the thinking analytical type is going to want to sit and process and understand. And the emotional type is going to get frustrated. You don't feel me. You don't hear me. Because all they get back is logic, reason, and understanding. And what they want is compassion and heart and feeling. So once the thinking analytical type can get this and say, wow, what does empathy look like? What does honoring my partner's feelings look like? Which means that they have to honor their own first. And the recognition that this robot of a scientist actually has feelings is a monumental day for all of us that have gone very, very left brain, me included. And so particularly when the male can own the fact that he has feelings, can he then open to a new place of evolution within himself? And conversely, the feminine that has the lacuna, she gets to take responsibility and not make him responsible for her emotional happiness. So the other scenario is when you have a man that has the emotional type, like myself, who's going to attract a woman that has the Sora and is the analytical thinking type. She intrinsically is more masculine. He intrinsically is more feminine. And they must at some level reverse these roles, because he is not going to do well in a demasculated relationship while this gorilla of a woman is running his life. It will not make for very good intimacy. So he has to take ownership for his masculine, for consistency, following through with details. He's the one that needs to be able to articulate himself, to speak in ways that her mental mind that wants to know and understand can finally rest, because she has heard enough of the story and she's had a conversation that has given her the information that she needs so she can relax. And her life lesson is getting out of her head in this control of needing to know and understand, embracing her own feminine, which is her unknown, which is very scary to her own mind. And so the more she can go into her goddess and her feminine and this energy, she can evolve into the woman that she is as he evolves into the conscious male that he is. And that's the other relationship dynamic. Recognize that the other thing that's probably the most powerful thing to recognize in intimacy, and this is the joke of all of it, is that each of us, we are attracted because we're opposite. And our partner is opposite of us, and we think we're not like them. But when the rubber meets the road and you do some conscious forms of conflict resolution with some really good kinds of communication and feelings and I statements and these kinds of things, what you begin to realize is each partner is dealing with the same fear from an opposite perspective. And let me use the example of self-esteem. One partner in the relationship will usually have a more confident, more straightforward, and more powerful self-esteem, more of a know-it-all, if you will, or willing to take that risk. That is usually a compensation for needing to prove themselves because they felt inadequate as a child. So when we all feel inadequate as children, we usually choose one of two roads. We either go down the road of becoming the know-it-all, or we come down the road of I'm the powerless victim. So when we go down the road of the know-it-all then is going to attract a partner that has more the low self-esteem. But the reality is the know-it-all and the victim both have the same self-esteem. They've just acted it out in opposite ways. And when each of them can see and own that they each of them have an insecurity about themselves, then they can stop the projections, pull them back off of each other, own their inner fears, and move into a greater level of love and intimacy in their relationship. And that's what it means to be in a conscious relationship, which is to take ownership and responsibility for your own feelings. And when each person in a relationship does that, particularly in a specific form of a conflict, and you're able to really own what's going on, whether you need help from a professional or you can do it yourself, when you can expose your deepest fear in any conflict, and each partner can do it, you will each see you have basically the same thing going on in slightly different ways. And that when you take ownership for it, you diffuse the energy of it, and you will come together for a most glorious evening. I promise. And that's how these patterns work themselves out, how these dynamics play themselves out. And when we don't react, blame, project, but we go to the deeper level of interpersonal transmutation, we are able to move into a greater loving, more open space in our hearts and in our relationships. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I hope it's stimulated your mind, opened your heart, take you to places you haven't ever been before, created new opportunities, or maybe you're just questioning everything. What a wonderful place. There are many, many opportunities within this model to meet yourself, to see yourself, and to grow in life. And one of the things that this model does for me is it shows us what our life is about and what we're being called to. And if anything, what it does, it can create a sense of a desire. One of the places I find I'm most effective in my practice is to help people. I'm a cheerleader. I help people become excited about their healing, to see that anything that's put in front of you, whether it's a condition, a disease, a broken bone, a failed relationship, doesn't matter what it is, anything that's been placed in front of you is an opportunity. And within that opportunity, there's a lesson. And we can give you tools and processes and skills and things to do in order to engage consciously in the learning, to deal with any pattern at a physiological level, at an emotional level, at a mental level, at a spiritual level. So this model gives us a framework and it sets the guideposts to how we can show up in life consciously to deal with any of the multitude of the challenges that we're faced with here on this planet, whether it's our own health, or whether it's an intimate relationship or cash in the bank. It doesn't matter. Each one of these areas is an opportunity for us to improve the quality of our lives. So if you'd like more information, feel free to go to our website at www.behavioraliridology.com. You'll see it on the screen in front of you. You can feel free to call me at any time. I am open to do consultations. I travel, I teach, I certify people in this work. And my greatest passion and joy is watching people take ownership for their lives and become excited about the healing properties, the healing opportunities, and the things that they can create with their life when they go into their hearts, when they open their minds, when they cleanse their bodies, and they move to new levels. I've had to do it in my own life through my own fall and healing the arthritis, and I've had to look at different aspects of myself in relationship. And it's done nothing but open me up into a better place in my life. And I look forward to supporting you in your life as we both and all grow together. Blessings.